The oceans off of California's central coast are fast becoming a launch pad to the future. The drive to move away from fossil fuels towards cleaner, more sustainable sources of energy is colliding with complex marine ecosystems, independent commercial fishermen, and indigenous tribal heritage that dates back thousands of years. This is a story about fear and hope. Fossil fuels have been powering our economies for 150 years. However, the Earth is warming, the oceans are warming, and ocean oxygen levels are depleted. Warmer oceans, sea level rise, coastal erosion, and destruction of critical marine habitats. The time has come to respond to this crisis and move beyond fossil fuels.
Climate change is the most serious threat facing our society, our country, and the planet. The scientific consensus is overwhelming that burning fossil fuels are responsible for climate change.
We should start thinking about thrivability and being able to thrive. A lot of people are going to be affected in the future in the next 50 years about climate change if we don't act boldly now.
In the face of climate change, there's going to be a need for there to be more flexibility. There's a desire to bring younger people into the fisheries. So there's a lot of discussion as to how you do that without overcrowding or overexploiting the available space that we have to fish.
Marine ecosystems and fisheries are tightly linked to ocean climate. Some of the great fisheries have risen and fallen as a result of climatic changes. It's likely that the productivity of these fisheries is also going to go down.
When you look at the bigger perspective here, and what we are really here for is to combat climate change. We are here to look at the bigger picture.
The story of humankind is the story of man bending the natural environment to its will. Wind power has been used as long as humans have put sails into the wind. For more than 2,000 years, wind-powered machines have allowed us to grind grain, pump water, and travel to new lands. Now, developers and politicians are seeking to harness that same coastal wind for even greater societal benefit, to provide clean electricity for the future. The steady coastal winds off of California's shores create powerful upwelling, capable of supporting rich and diverse marine ecosystems. Over millennia, the Chumash people have built a maritime culture around that productivity.
Offshore wind is something that California needs to transition off fossil fuels. So offshore wind needs to be compatible. And I think that one of the things we need to stop doing is saying competing interests. There should be no competing interests. We all should have the same interest, and that is to make green renewable energy smart, cost-effective, and reliable, to also make sure that it's done to the highest environmental standards and quality, and that it's compatible with conservation efforts.
However, change is always difficult. Any new industry will have some impact on both the people and the environment. There will always be short-term winners and losers.
They're going to displace some fishermen from the grounds that they normally fish, and then they're going to be pushed into grounds that other fishermen are currently fishing.
And I know a lot of people like to say, oh, you know, the tragedy of the commons, you know, you can't have fishermen using public property. I mean, it's completely a privilege. We can just take that away from them. But as a fisherman, I don't agree with that. I don't think you can just come in, bring industry in and say, okay, fishermen, move over. Here you go. We're just going to push you down the ladder and tough luck.
Europe is already way ahead of the US at applying offshore wind power. Now, a new class of technology has arrived that will allow California to catch up. Floating offshore wind is now a safe and commercially viable form of clean power for generations to come.
The outer continental shelf is drops off very quickly. And that means we have to go to floating foundations. So it's a very recent technology, but exciting because the cost of energy trajectory on those big turbines are going down, and it's really suitable for this environment. Wind turbines today so we have to distinguish between turbines you see on land. So when you drive through the desert, you go to Palm Springs and you see a wind turbine out there, and you take the turbines that will come in these offshore projects, they are much larger and they rotate a lot slower. So that's a big development that has taken place. And just recently, we have taken a leap in technology from these 7 to 10 megawatt wind turbines, now talking about 12 to 16 megawatt turbines. So it's an exciting process where Europe has clearly had the lead on that.
California has enormous wind power potential, enough to supply more than 250% of the state's current electricity use. The Department of the Interior and Department of Defense have delineated a Central Coast wind development area known as the Morro Bay 376 Call Area. This area alone could generate enough electricity to power millions of homes. Legislators have recently passed AB 525, a bill that will direct state agencies to develop a strategic plan for offshore wind resources and sets aggressive goals. Meeting these goals would also mean managing leases for large-scale deployment of wind turbines. However, if any nearshore or offshore wind projects are approved, it is likely that commercial fishermen will lose access to some fishing grounds, forcing them to spend more as they travel further to find fish.
BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, is the federal organization that is in charge of pushing this concerted effort to pursue offshore wind. And BOEM has had to deal with state organizations like State Lands and the Coastal Commission because they have authority over what happens as that power comes to the beach.
Originally, industry came to us and said, how can we work together? Then BOEM shows up. And BOEM has this process where they have stakeholder meetings, and they ask you, is this going to hurt you? You know, this is what we're going to do. And then you tell them, yes, it's going to hurt us. And then BOEM says, well, good. We know it's going to hurt you. That's great. Now let's go ahead and lease all these wind farms out, because they have absolutely no process or policy to do anything for the fishermen.
I say this, with 100% certainty, is that fishermen don't want to lose their grounds. You can't compensate them enough. They'd much rather have their fishing grounds back, not get displaced, than have money for it. I think that's very, very clear.
One mechanism that can help mitigate negative impact on fishermen and their communities are community benefit agreements.
There is a strong effort to try to get the state to support a policy statement that's been developed that would provide for some immediate direct payment to individuals for the immediate impacts they're going to have from site assessment and construction and that kind of thing, but that the larger component of compensation goes to community funds, community-based funds, managed by the fisheries, and that it is aimed at creating resilience over a long time period within the fleet. And it's largely economic resilience. Such things as reduced fuel costs, reduced berthing costs, providing high quality ice at low cost. All these kind of things can occur through an ongoing fund for the life of the wind project. But I do want to stress that's dead last in the hierarchy of discussion. That comes about only when they're facing actually losing some grounds, then this compensation needs to occur.
In addition to the offshore utility-scale wind project underway, 2 wind power developers have recently proposed small-scale pilot projects off of Vandenberg Space Force Base and Point Arguello.
We take a very few number of turbines, but sufficient to understand the impacts, and you put them in an environment where you have certain exposure, and you document it. And that's what the values are here, that we could develop, test, and devise mitigation measures and understand entanglement and secondary entanglement. And that's easier to do on 4 turbines than to do it on 200 turbines. We undertook a very rigorous process, analyzing the coastline and looking at the areas, looking at all the sanctuaries, looking at the various areas of visual impact. And that led us to the only open spot on that map is actually outside of the Vandenberg Space Force base.
So here we are at Surf Beach, and this is the area of Vandenberg Space Force base, which is an highly active base. Further southeast, there's 3 large launch pads for rockets where all kind of ICBMs to space shuttle can be launched, and SpaceX. Further inland here, we see the electrical infrastructure and substations, which connects the electrical network, both from local areas here, but also from a marine platform that comes in and connects here. And furthermore, we have one technology which is concrete-based. We have a second technology which is steel-based, also with different anchoring systems, one being normal catenary anchoring systems and another TLP solution, which basically ties the anchors or the structure down under the sea, and you have more of a straight line of the anchor lines down to the seabed. Those constitute different kind of technologies, and that's what it's all about, to find the right technology for the right environment.
The state permitting process and the federal permitting process are different. When evaluating the Vandenberg project proposals, the State Lands Department will impose a rigorous environmental assessment.
This project, as it is in state waters, will undergo a process from State Lands Commission to which we have no say or impact. That will be completely done independently. That's why it's so important we come back to facts and to the science to make sure that the State Lands Commission and the commissioners will make those independent assessments and come to a conclusion where this project can get a no and this project can get a yes. But we have to have faith and trust in those processes.
Still, the Vandenberg projects remain controversial.
There are some ideas, like the offshore wind in Vandenberg, that are just bad ideas.
That area from Point Conception to where the closed zone is at Vandenberg, at Destroyer Point, it's open. So there's multiple fisheries happening down there. And they want to come in and do a pilot project, but nobody's saying, well, then where are all the fishermen going to fish at? I mean, people make a lot of money down there.
The scientific community sees a lot of value in piloting floating wind turbine technologies.
If that technology and if those approaches are developed, then you're talking about taking an existing protocol that you've demonstrated that can work and modifying it to make it work elsewhere. It's not like you have to build something from scratch, right? And so I would be very confident that whatever the scientific community learns by running a monitoring program in this place is absolutely going to well inform whatever's going to be going on an industrial scale project, with potentially hundreds of turbines 20 to 40 miles offshore.
If approved, the 2 projects will fall within the proposed Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary Area. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA, announced it has officially begun the sanctuary designation process, making matters more complicated for the wind farm proposals. The sanctuary aims to recognize and preserve Chumash tribal history and protect the area's rich biodiversity, including a world-renowned ecological transition zone where temperate waters from the north meet the subtropics. The sanctuary area is known for its extensive kelp forests, sandy beaches, coastal dunes, and wetlands, and provides nursery grounds for numerous commercial fish species and important habitat for many threatened and endangered species.
The National Marine Sanctuary System provides a few fairly specific protections. The main one is it prohibits disturbance to the seabed from permanent structures. Effectively, what that's going to do is prohibit oil and gas platforms from going in a National Marine Sanctuary, and likely also preclude offshore wind energy development because those would be anchored to the seabed. When National Marine Sanctuaries are created, they do not have any authority to regulate fishing.
However, past experiences have left the commercial fishermen wary of the National Marine Sanctuary Program.
Fishermen have really not had a very good experience with the sanctuary program. It's been very, very difficult. In the early 90s, there was a famous promise that was made by NOAA and a lot of elected leaders that the sanctuary wasn't going to interfere with commercial fishing, wasn't going to take actions that affected their livelihood or harmed them. But then in the State's Marine Life Protection Act process that began in about 2005, the sanctuary stepped in and used their authority and their stature to really shape that process. And I recall personally seeing sanctuary representatives pointing at maps and pointing at really high quality habitat, best fishing areas, and saying, these are the areas we want to remove from fishing.
The only thing that would be good if with a Chumash sanctuary is if it prevented the expansion of wind farms. That'd be the only good thing.
And in the end, like, we aren't going to get there by just telling people to do the right thing. You know, we live in a free market capitalist society, and whether we like that or don't, it doesn't matter. This is where we are. And so our solutions are going to have to involve marketplaces, right? And so, I would argue, let's incentivize people to do the right thing. And yeah, if they're going to make a bunch of money making clean energy, great.
Floating offshore wind promises billions of dollars of cost savings to California, bringing economic opportunity, job creation, and the retirement of gas-fired power plants. By 2040, the gross output of California offshore wind could be worth as much as $31 billion. The Central Coast of California is undergoing a whirlwind of activity. The Chumash culture needs to be respected and involved in decision-making. The scientific community needs to be well-funded to help conserve the environment and inform policy. The commercial fishing community should have a seat at the table. And successful pilot projects will be key for our fight against climate change. We all have a call to action, and as long as we work together, we can build a safe and healthy future for marine life, commercial fishermen, Chumash heritage, wind developers, and marine ecologists to all thrive together.